The federal tax on bungalows is designed to solve the problem of urban planning. What I call the Atlanta model of urban growth is a series of one-story, two-story houses being built on something like a half-acre plot where you've got a front yard, you've got a backyard, maybe big enough to have a garden, but you probably are in an HOA where you're not allowed to do anything serious agriculturally. So you have to keep your lawn cut to a certain length, and you've got house after house after house in these suburban HOAs where everything is 15 minutes away. You know, Walmart is 15 minutes away, the grocery store is 15 minutes away. And this creates this infinite expansion where the commute to work is 30 to 45 minutes, or people work, from Zoom remotely. There's just this infinite suburban expansion. And this model is not just occurring in America, but it's also occurring in Europe. There's a different model of growth, which is urban concentration. This is something that you see in Singapore. This is something that you see in Hong Kong. This is something that we saw historically, is that cities don't grow horizontally, they grow vertically. Now, what's the difference between these two models is that if we continue to grow horizontally, residentially, expanding out forever, there is a loss of density. You could make the argument, a pro-rural argument that would say people need their space. People shouldn't be packed together like rats. This rural concept. But I would say that the benefits of a rural lifestyle, like the ability to have a farm, the ability to have farm animals, the ability to go hunting, the ability to go in the woods, the ability to have peace and quiet away from traffic, all of these advantages, I would say it's not that the suburban is the best of both worlds, but that it dips below a certain threshold of advantage that you get from rural life, and it also fails to capture the magic, the energy, and the power of vertical growth. I would say that a rural lifestyle and the advantages of rural life, of to be alone or to be isolated or to be one with nature, are absent from the suburban life. The advantages of vertical growth are that you change density, you change distance. I think for a rural person, or say a rural child, because you are so deprived of stimulation, life is exciting. The great outdoors are exciting. And in a dense urban population, there's so much to do, there's so many people to meet. The suburban environment is an environment of separation, alienation, isolation, where you're cut off from the purity of a wild nature, and you're also cut off from, or you don't have easy access to, the excitement of the big city. So we see a phenomenon with kids going off to college where they're moving away, they're moving out. The question is, what is the optimal rural setting, rural development? And in my mind, it has to do with the size of the property, the size of the space, the ability to explore the space. So there's different, sorts of acreage that might fit into this. And for a good measure, I would say something like, minimum of 2 acres. 2-acre plot, to me, can constitute something like a rural plot. Anything less than 2 acres, and you're getting into suburban territory. So the idea is to bifurcate housing development in America, that if you want to live a rural lifestyle, a rural, we'll classify for the ease of this video, we'll say a rural plot is any plot over 2 acres, residentially zoned, or the other. This gets into zoning. We can talk about this, but commercial zoning. When you go into town, you go into a city center, there's going to be a Walmart, there's going to be a Home Depot, there's going to be a job lot, Kmart, BJ's, trying to think of other big box stores, Costco. So there's going to be a series of stores that are all competing, that all offer very similar services. They're selling food and they're selling housing, home improvement or furniture or whatever. And all of these big chains, these are national chains, they exist in all 50 states. And you're going to find, between, 4 and 20 of these different chains in any given city center, in any given town. And my argument would be that if you have a store, if you have a chain that's reached some sort of critical mass, where it's at the point of a Walmart, Kmart, job lot, publicly traded companies, that these companies should be essentially forced into the same building complex. Now, that building complex could be constructed something like a mall. My concept of the mall is not as currently malls are these box structures. My concept of the mall is as a ring, as a kind of coliseum. And the idea would be within this ring to have a central kind of train or trolley like you see in an airport. So designing malls more like airports, where you have different terminals and you can hop on the train and you can be carried around the mall. And it has all of these different stores. One of the problems with vertically building commercial, like Walmart, Kmart, Home Depot, is because a lot of their stock is heavy and it might be difficult to transport it vertically. Otherwise, I'd say just put it all in one skyscraper, right? That's if we can figure out how to get your groceries to the top level of the skyscraper, great. But if not, I advocate a Coliseum model, and then in the middle of the Coliseum model, it would be a Central Park style relaxation picnic zone. You can go to the mall and have all these restaurants in the mall. It also, all the fast food, KFC, McDonald's, Burger King, all these things would be within one central structure where, it would take you less than 5 minutes to zip around on the central trolley from any location to another within this big mall. So it'd be a large structure, right? I think Mall of America is pretty good. I won't say pretty good, I'll say it's pretty big. I haven't been there, but it would be a very large structure, and it'd be in the center of these towns. And the idea is to consolidate all of the businesses, these national businesses, so that you don't get so much redundancy. Right now, you can go to Walmart, Kmart, Job Lot, Home Depot, and you're going to find a lot of the same products in the same at these different stores. The question is, why are we selling all these products at these different stores? It's because, well, Walmart's 5 minutes closer, Kmart's 5 minutes closer from wherever you happen to be, or whatever. But by forcing all of these, especially fast food chains, forcing all of these things into the same thing. Now, if you're not a national business, you're not a publicly traded company, and you're just a mom and pop store, mom and pop restaurant, then I would say you can set up shop anywhere you want. So this is kind of in line with preventing horizontal spread and preventing the building of parking lots. Okay, parking lots are a problem. The idea that we have these huge parking lots everywhere. We need to basically do away with parking lots. And one of the big ways we're going to get rid of parking lots in terms of the total city, right? In terms of the ability, like if I have a Walmart here and a Kmart there and everything, all these different plazas all around town, then it's going to be difficult to reduce the amount of parking lots. So we have to reduce the amount of parking lots. I would say also a lot of investment in terms of underground parking and maybe even within building parking, that you drive under the building into the first floor and then you go up the building into the second floor. So all of these ideas, but promoting them via government incentives and saying, like, let's say I have the small town of Ruralville, and Ruralville, for whatever reason, has been growing in population and it's about to become a city. And Walmart says, we'd like to build a Walmart superstore in Ruralville. And the government would then come in and say, well, you're a nationally recognized brand, you're in 50 states, you're a publicly traded company, you can't build here on your own. You have to build, and we'd set some kind of a minimum of size. We'd say, you've got to build a building that's 30 stories tall, or you've got to build a Coliseum-style mall or something. You have to build something that doesn't just house Walmart, but it houses a lot of other things. And this is going to be, and you're going to rent out a share of it, and so on. And companies can go in together and they can collaborate to build these buildings. But you can't just build a little old Walmart and then next door all these other buildings populate. You have to build something big and substantial. And so the idea would be that if a nationally recognized brand wants to move into somewhere, they would have to do serious investment. We're talking about, they're putting up $1 billion. Now, ultimately, I believe it's going to pay off in the end for the company and also for the people. But it's a large upfront investment where you have to build some huge, colossal building. And so the idea would be that, if you go to a city in San Francisco or Boston or New York or Miami or LA, and you see these big skyscrapers, the idea would be that, instead of having a gradual buildup of a city over a century that eventually results in skyscrapers, the idea that you start building your skyscrapers as the first step of urbanization. And then you build out around the skyscraper vertically, right? So it's like, okay, we need another skyscraper. What this is doing is currently we have a model where you build horizontally and then you build and build and build, and then finally the horizontal growth gets so what am I trying to say here? The transportation times become so egregious from one side of the horizontal growth to the other that you have to build skyscrapers, that you have to build densely. But my argument is that we start building densely. We start building densely so that we have a firm divide between dense, urban, residential, and commercial neighborhoods. And then past that, it's pure rural. And so, one way to do this is to change the way that we allow for subdivisions, and saying that 2 acres is kind of the minimum subdivision that you have. You can't further subdivide. The other tax incentive that I would put in place would be what I call the bungalow tax. And the bungalow tax would be designed, it would be an inverse tax based on the number of stories of your building. So if you want to build a 1-story house, you pay the full bungalow tax. If you build a 2-story house, that's half the tax. And it could be a flat tax, it could be like a property tax, but it would be at a federal level. It wouldn't be a particular municipal level. And so anywhere in the country you want to build a house, you want to build a structure, if that structure is 1 story or less than 20 foot high, you could do it by foot or you could do it by story. If you say you want to build it 1 story, you're going to pay some flat yearly tax like 10 grand or something. But if you build it 2 stories, you're paying 5 grand. 3 stories, you're paying like 3 grand, 3.3, and so on and so forth, to the point where if you're building a skyscraper, you pay very little tax. So the tax incentive is that people should be building bigger houses. Now, where does this tax money go? We're paying into these buildings. Well, it goes toward some kind of a government style, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae style, helping people, subsidizing the building of these taller houses. So upfront subsidies for people is collected from this tax. Eventually what happens is that people are, and this wouldn't apply if you have, two or more acres. If you're on a rural piece of land and you want to just stick your trailer out there, this tax doesn't apply to you. But if you're on less than 2 acres of land, and we assume you're subdivided into some urban situation, then we want to make these buildings taller. We want to vertically grow. Imagine, just go out to the middle of Nebraska or Kansas or something, these big empty places. And what happens is you get these little bungalow houses, these little 1 to 2 story houses dotting, and these suburban developments go up. What if we just went out to the middle of nowhere and we just built a skyscraper? Maybe not literally, there's going to be some other buildings too. But just imagine driving on the highway and all of a sudden you just see a skyscraper pop up. I mean, wouldn't there be something powerful about that? It's like a tower, the Towers of Venice. This isn't an entirely new concept, but I think we should fill the Great Plains, the area stretching basically from North Dakota to, El Paso, this plains area with very little mountains, very flat land. We should be building skyscrapers. We should be consolidating these people to the extent that people live out there. We should be building these skyscrapers, and we should be encouraging, again, have federal taxes. We have state taxes, but we should have federal taxes that are incentivizing people to populate the plains. And the other thing I want to tack onto this video while we're at it, while we're talking about this, I kind of wanted to make this like a short, like one-off, like here's the idea behind the bungalow tax. Really, it's to stop this infinite suburban sprawl, and it's to grow vertically. Vertical growth. There's power in vertical growth. There's convenience in vertical growth. There's greatness in vertical growth. Okay, infinite suburban sprawl is not great. It's not beautiful. It's not powerful. It's not civilizational. It's not even like a hive. It's something. It's in an uncanny valley of planning and development. It's not quite urban. It's not quite rural, and so it's the worst of all worlds. But currently, the financial incentives, because I think of basically high time preference market forces, are incentivizing this. And we can intervene. As a civilization, we can intervene. We can say, here's how we're going to develop properties. We're not going to have infinite suburban development. We're going to have vertical urban development. And if you don't want to live in the rat race of the city, there are rural options in the plains. Plenty of rural opportunities in America. But we're going to have a strict urban-rural divide. You're going to be able to draw a circle around the city. You're going to be able to step out of the city. You're going to be able to walk, like Central Park, right? So the idea is that Central Park, you walk from a skyscraper zone into a park zone. Well, my idea is that you have ring cities where outside of the city limits, we define a city as being, 10 miles in diameter maybe, or 5 miles, or whatever you want that to be. Maybe it could be 1 mile. You could say a city is 1 mile in diameter. And outside of that, you have a ring that's like an inverted Central Park, because Central Park is a park surrounded by a city, but the ring city model is you have a city surrounded by a park. And there are 8 highways going in the 4 cardinal directions as well as the 4 sub-cardinal directions, so northwest, southwest, and so on and so forth, that you have these highways that pass through the park, going in and out of the city, but that parkland is like Central Park. There really aren't any buildings. It's just, trees, grass, shrubs, birds, maybe put some deer in there, whatever. It's an interesting experiment. It's an interesting way to do it. If you look at models of Atlantis, Atlantis was a ring city, but instead of parks, you had water, you had canals, which is also an interesting concept. I mean, it would be interesting to go out to something like Nebraska and create a bunch of artificial lakes in a ring model. One of the issues with building canals and channels like that is water quality, because if water is not running, if it's stagnant, then it breeds a lot of bacteria and algae. So water management is a difficult thing to figure out how best to do that. But that's besides the point. The main point is we've got the bungalow tax, and then I want to add into this the Nevada Corporation, which is designed to shift welfare populations. So currently, the way that our populations are organized is that you have a huge amount of dependence on the government, a huge amount of people using food stamps. And this is not just in urban areas, it's also in rural areas, but you don't notice it as much. When you're driving through a small town, you don't see as many homeless people on the street. Whereas in urban spaces, you do. In San Francisco, in Austin, Texas, you see these homeless encampments. And so the idea would be to give people the help that they need, but to make the cities great, to make the cities functional, to make the cities safe, to make the cities clean and comfortable, is that if you want government assistance, if you're on government assistance, then you are not polluting the space, polluting the commons with open air drug use, with disease. You can go to cities in California where people are they've got open flesh wounds and they're picking their flesh wounds because they're on drugs, because they're mentally ill. This is tragic. This is disgusting. It needs to be dealt with. It can't be allowed to fester. Because when you allow these problems to fester in the open like this, it is a kind of ugliness, and everyone is forced to see it and deal with it. Now, you could say there's something to be said for the proliferation of ugliness. That's a good thing. Maybe we should be dealing with death more often. And, that's a fair point, and I see something to that. I mean, I guess you could argue for Halloween and public execution and all kinds of things on that model. And I guess I'm sympathetic to that argument, but I think there's other ways to achieve it. And I think when you have these people who are living in a state of anarchy, in order to create a sense of order, to process them for assistance, and I have the idea of the Nevada Corporation because basically Nevada as a territory is almost completely worthless, and it's also to a great degree owned by the federal government. So you start building this housing in Nevada, and you start housing these people in Nevada. And so, there's a socialistic concept that everyone deserves a house, that everyone deserves free food, everyone deserves free shelter, everyone deserves free water, everyone deserves free healthcare, okay, fine. All of these people will get all those free things, and they will live in Nevada. They will live in this housing in Nevada. People are not moving out into Nevada. People don't want to be in Nevada. Nevada ecologically is unsustainable in the long term. Doesn't have a lot of water. You have to ship in the water, import water. It's not, as a civilization, you don't want to be putting your big important cities in Nevada. But, and I'm talking about north of Las Vegas. Las Vegas is an exception. And, Rena's on the border. But most of Nevada, really, you've got Elko, I think is the third largest city. Most of Nevada is desert, it's wasteland, it's not valuable, it's not profitable, it's not good land. So put all of these people in Nevada, everyone who's on assistance, everyone who's on food stamps, everyone who's on, and it's like, okay, you don't want to move to Nevada, well, then be independent. Get yourself together, pull yourself together. Be the American dream. But if you can't do it, if you're disabled and you're mentally disabled, physically disabled, you can't work, you won't work, you don't want to work, you don't know what work is, you're confused, you're on drugs, you're addicted, move everybody out to Nevada. Similar thing with prisoners, similar things with our prisons, is that a lot of people who are in prison could just be moved to Nevada in a kind of open air prison system. And you can do this with the leg braces, tracking people that way. But you say everything, all of the problems of society, we are doing a kind of internal colonization, the same way that Australia was a penal colony, so Britain sent all of their prisoners to Australia. We're going to concentrate all of the problems of our society, remove it from San Francisco, remove it from Austin, remove it from Seattle, and we're going to put all these people into Nevada. We're going to set up these kind of, I'm trying to think of Levittown. We're going to set up these Levittowns in Nevada for the homeless, for the drug addicts, for the criminals. Everyone's going to Nevada. And the question is, well, isn't this bad, or isn't this mean, or isn't this wrong? The truth is that most of these people, if they're not criminals, they might not be aware of what's going on. They might not care. They've kind of given up on life. They're not cognizant. They're not in the right state of mind. And so they don't know the difference. They've simply, statistically speaking, the cities produce these people. And it's time for an excretory system. It's time to flush. When you build up toxins in the body, you don't just hold them in your body. You don't do no excretion November. You have to excrete. This is what any system does. Is you have to separate it and segregate it. You can't. There's a phrase. You don't excrete where you eat. So people who are basically at rock bottom, mentally, physically, they're not a productive member of society. They all are now in Nevada. And they're not going to try to escape to Nevada or go anywhere else because they're not really capable of any kind of planning, right? The people who are homeless on the street, they're homeless because, if you look into their stories, it's like, well, they became mentally ill. Well, they became addicted to drugs. And they just stayed where they are. They're not traveling across the country, right? If people have enough gumption to travel across the country, then it's not a prison. There's no fence around Nevada. It's just, okay, you're clearly out of your mind. You're clearly not doing well. You're homeless. You're on the street. So we're going to take these people. We're going to, tranquilize them, put them in a straitjacket, put them on a bus, and then bring them to Nevada and say, here's your new home. You want to, and it's going to be like a shipping container thing. It's going to be a tiny home. It's going to be very simple. It's going to be better than what they have. It's going to be better than a tent, right? You say, okay, this is your house. You can make it beautiful. You can take care of it, or you can fill it with trash. But this is your house. I mean, we could even give them tents, right? If they don't already have tents, we could give them tents. We're going to say, this is your new home. Drop them off. We give them water. We give them food. Have facilities in Nevada. Have these, bread lines in Nevada where all these homeless people can go into the bread line every day, and they can get their food, and they can get their water, and provide them with tents, and they're living out in Nevada, and they're throwing trash everywhere, and it's very gross and disgusting, and they're still getting drugs. I mean, there's always a drug market. These people are always going to get drugs. It's possible, if you want to be really libertarian about it, you can provide them with the drugs, but they're going to be in Nevada, separated from everyone else. You can go visit them, and again, if they have enough agency, they can leave Nevada if they want to. But you're trying to create a homeless paradise in Nevada. You're trying to provide for these people, make them comfortable as they live out the rest of their lives, and hopefully they make something of it. But you can't save people. You can't force people to be productive members of society. If they want to be homeless and jobless, and we're going to create this beautiful place for them in Nevada. And with the criminals, kind of parallel to that in Nevada, you have these areas where that can be more constricted, in the sense that they have an ankle bracelet and they're not allowed to leave the state of Nevada. They're not allowed to leave a prescribed space, and they're going to live there. They're going to have the freedom to get remote work or do jobs and have a whole parallel economy. But it's like, you've committed a felony. You killed somebody, or grand theft, larceny, you robbed a bank, you robbed a 7-Eleven, you stabbed somebody, whatever. Okay, you're a psychopath. You're going to live in Nevada for the rest of your life. It's not life in prison. You're not in a cell, right? You're not cooped up with all these people in a cell. You have freedom to go. You want to go to a strip club, there's going to be strip clubs. You want to go to the bar, you want to get drunk, you want to do whatever you want to do. You're free to do all that stuff. You're free to have, because what don't people have in prison? What don't they have access to theoretically? I mean, all sorts of things are stuck into prisons. But, if you're a prisoner and you're saying, what am I being denied? It's like, you're being denied the freedom to hop into a car and go for a drive. You're being denied the freedom to have access to drugs and sex. You're being denied access, visitations with friends and family, and so on. So these people can live full and satisfying lives, but they're going to do it in Nevada. Again, we're separating the felonious population and the homeless population, which constitutes together probably at least 6 million Americans. Because I'm guessing that there are probably 3 million Americans, and we could look up the statistics, but there are probably 3 million Americans on now, right on the streets, doing drugs, just looking crazy, looking, diseased with skin lesions, not showering, and they're just out on our streets. And I'm saying basically that's illegal going forward. We're going to provide for you. We're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure that you have food and water. We're going to make sure that you have access to shelter, whether that's a tent, whether that's a tiny house. We're going to give you something better than what you have. We're going to take care of you. We're going to try to alleviate your suffering. But we're going to do it in Nevada. We're not going to do it in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard. We're not going to do it in downtown Seattle. We're not going to do it on Capitol Hill in Austin, Texas. So we're going to separate these people, remove these people, put them in their space, take care of them, make sure it's humane conditions. These aren't concentration camps or something like this. This is all above board, respecting human rights, but you're not allowed to do it in great American cities because we need to make our cities beautiful. And it's not beautiful to have all these problems in our cities. And again, you're committing felonies. I would say people's prison sentences need to be shortened. I think in general we should be abolishing prison. I don't think holding people in a prison is something that we should be doing to millions of Americans for the long term. I think that basically you've committed a felony, you've committed a terrible, heinous crime, you can no longer be part of public polite society, and so we're putting you in Nevada. Again, a lot of those people might try to leave, and so in that case, you have ankle bracelets, you have check-ins, you have parole officers. You say, you have to stay in Nevada for the rest of your life. And if you leave Nevada, it's serious consequences, the death penalty, right? So you have to stay in Nevada. So Nevada would become a very ugly state. It would become a very dangerous state. It would have a lot of crime. It would have a lot of gang activity, because in prisons you have a lot of gang activity, right? Gang activity happens where you have psychopaths. And if we take all the psychopaths in our society and we force them to live in Nevada, then Nevada is going to be full of psychopaths. It's going to be full of killers and stealers and so on. But they're going to have the ability to drive cars. They're going to have the ability. It's like a reservation. It's like an interior territory where there are checkpoints in and out, where there's a border. Maybe there's a border fence around a part of Nevada. Again, it wouldn't be the whole state because, people like Las Vegas, people like Reno. But really outside of Las Vegas and Reno, there's not much of value to be lost in Nevada. It's just empty space. It's just a wasteland. And we're going to put everybody in Nevada, and they can live out their lives and be concentrated in Nevada and be separate from everyone else. And, let's say you commit a felony. Let's say you kill somebody, and instead of putting that person in jail for the rest of their life, say, well, we're going to process you. We're going to see, what the risk is, right? So, for example, let's say it's somebody who killed somebody, in a drunk driving incident, or they killed somebody, because it was an ex-lover or something like that. These sort of one-off killings, different from kind of gang or serial killings or repeated killings, or someone who's, we can assess recidivism risk. And if someone is just someone's like a serial killer, of course you don't let them off on the streets. But most people who commit these crimes aren't necessarily in that type of a risk category. Like, there's different risk categories. And, maybe for people, if someone is so dangerous that there's no possible way they could be let out into the public again, or else they would just, start killing and maiming everybody, then probably that person doesn't deserve to live, right? I mean, I'm not sure what the argument is. We think it's more humane to put something in a cage for the rest of their life, as opposed to just ending their life. Yeah, I don't understand. I guess it's this quantity of life thing where, if you're 30 years old and you're a killer, that it's somehow humane to keep you in a cage for the rest of your life, with 1 hour in the prison kind of workout area outside. Somehow that's more humane than just ending somebody's life. I don't agree with that. I don't see that. I don't understand that argument, where it's proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that someone is just like, a terrible sadist and a psychopath. They have no self-control and they have no empathy and regard for others. I would say that that population, which I think really that core population is probably like 100,000 people. I think in that case, you bring back the death penalty and you do it cheaply, right? Currently, it costs like $40,000 to execute somebody. Um, there's no reason for that, right? We can probably bring that down to 4,000, right? There's a method where you execute somebody and then you cremate them, and that's the end of that. But for the vast majority of the prison population, like they're not killers necessarily. They might be stealing. They might be, going around. They might be drunk driving. They might be doing. They might be committing manslaughter, right? They might be accidentally killing people through negligence, killing people through abandonment, right? People who can't handle responsibility, infanticide. Like these are people who are not really psychopathic, sadistic people, um, but they might be mentally ill, they might be on drugs, right? All of these people, you say, we're not going to keep you in prison for the rest of your life, but you are going to have to live in Nevada for the rest of your life. And Nevada would be full of problems, but it wouldn't be full of more problems than prison. People already get shanked and killed in prison. People get beat up all the time. Every day, someone's getting beat up in prison. Prison is a terrible place. People also joke, I don't joke about this, but people joke about prison rape. And they often say things like, and here's again about the humanity of the death penalty versus prison. A lot of people will say things, with regard to some kind of criminal. They'll say, well, I hope he gets raped in prison, which I just think is a terrible thing. I don't think anyone should ever be raped. I don't care if they're a sadist. I don't care if they're a psychopath. I don't believe in rape as a weapon of war. I don't believe it's a cruel and unusual punishment. And the fact is that the rate of rape in prison is higher than outside of prison. More people per capita get raped in prison than maybe anywhere else. It's one of the most dangerous places in the world for rape. We have to get people out of the prisons. We have to get them out of the prisons, and we have to say, you should have an opportunity to live a peaceful life, in your own house, with your own job, with your own car, with the ability to drink alcohol, with the ability to visit prostitutes, the ability to have a girlfriend or whatever. You should have the ability to do all of that outside of prison walls. You shouldn't be threatened with being beat up by gang members. You shouldn't be, and I want to afford people that opportunity, but they have to do it within a contained space where they're just not released out into the general population, because the truth is that recidivism rates are extremely high. And once somebody has done something that bad, they do deserve to be punished. They do deserve to be separated from society. And we've used prison as a form of that, but I think it's inhumane. In the past, again, we sent people to Australia as an ancient practice called exiling. We exiled people to Australia. I think we should exile people again, but we can't use Australia because people live there now, or again, people are going to dispute that statement. But basically, there was a very small population in Australia before colonization. I'm saying there's a large productive civilization in Australia. We can't simply exile people to Australia, but we can exile people to Nevada. It's also possible. You look what's happening in El Salvador with the prison system and the murder rate. That there are some third world countries that are really good at dealing with criminals, and it's possible that we start shipping our criminals overseas. We basically go to El Salvador, we go to Nigeria, we go to the Congo, and we say, how much money do we have to pay you to take this prisoner off our hands? And they might charge, $40,000. And if that's less than keeping them in our prisons, we should absolutely be shipping these people overseas and saying, never come back to America. If you step foot in America, it's a death penalty. So we should be shipping all these people overseas. We should be shipping them to Nevada. We should be using every tactic that we can to avoid housing prisons in America. It's not good that we have this prison industrial complex in America. The other thing that I would say is that if you are going to have, something I disagree with, but if you are going to have a prison industrial complex, if you are going to have these prisons, private prisons, filled with all these prisoners, we should be engaged in great works, with or without prisoners. But I would say if we want to have a huge civilizational project that's going to take, millions of workers and many decades to complete, I would say one of these projects that I'm interested in is a Mississippi Pacific Canal. that would connect the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. After a Mississippi Pacific Canal, you could also think about doing a Mississippi Atlantic Canal. The Mississippi Pacific Canal, I believe that in one way or another, um, what is it? Minneapolis is connected to the Mississippi River by one connection or another. So you would have to follow rivers up through North Dakota, through probably Montana, and come out to the Snake River, which is in Washington. You'd have to go around various mountains, through various valleys. You might have to create some tunnels and pipelines. It'd be a huge engineering project just in terms of the planning. Love to speak with somebody about this, about really planning this out and designing the route of what it would be. And then you have to have millions of people just digging. And the way that I would do this is I would design shovels with Fitbits on them, where you would pay people according to the amount of shoveling that were done. You can detect um, kinesthetically how much shoveling someone is doing. And so you can just get people to do a lot of shoveling. And with millions of workers, we can dig canals. We've dug, the Panama Canal, let's say it took 20 years. Okay, well, we need to dig a series of Panama canals. We need to use a lot more labor. It's like the Egyptians building the pyramids. We need a huge amount of workers. And it's actually been speculated by some people, because it's very mysterious, that the Great Pyramids were not built with slave labor, strictly speaking. They were actually built with serf labor, meaning these people were paid, right? They weren't enslaved, but that they were actually paid workers. Some people might, dispute that, but whatever the case was, I think we can do it without slave labor. I think we can pay people to build a series of Panama canals all the way from the most northwesterly connection of the Mississippi River all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And the function of this would be that if we ever have some kind of civilizational collapse, that we're going to revert from cars, trucks, trains, and planes back to water travel, right? Water travel, historically, you talk about the Donau River, you talk about the Volga River, you talk about the rivers in China, you talk about the Amazon River, you talk about the Mississippi River, right? Rivers are extremely important for commerce and transportation. So if we can build a series of permanent canals that would last millennia, in case of a civilizational collapse, let's say there's a gamma ray burst, let's say there's a solar storm, let's say there's a nuclear war, and let's say cars, trains, planes, buses, and other assorted means of transportation are shut down, we're going to have to go back to boats on rivers. And if we can connect the Mississippi River with the Pacific Ocean, what we're going to do is we're going to allow for easier and greater volumes of commerce between the Pacific Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico, which is going to help restart civilization. Basically, when people are going back to a Neolithic form of civilization, having that river there connecting the Pacific Ocean to the Mississippi. So it's kind of like an insurance policy for civilization. It wouldn't have a ton of immediate tangible benefits. Of course, people like to live on rivers, and so there probably would be some real estate benefits. In parallel to this, we should be building intercontinental high-speed rail and so on and so forth. But planes do kind of make some of that outmoded. We could definitely do a lot to improve the airline industry. One of the things I would say is that we need to start promoting the concept of a Japanese hotel in the sky, meaning instead of sitting down on the plane, you actually lie down on the plane, which is much more comfortable. It's much more comfortable to lie down than it is to sit. And maybe that's just me because I don't like sitting. I think sitting is bad. But for me, I would be much more comfortable if I could lie down and sleep on a plane. The question is, well, wouldn't that just mean a plane full of first class? Well, technically, yes, but if we can put people in little coffins and little claustrophobic coffins, bunk bed style, then we can actually fit a lot of people on planes. Psychologically, people might have a problem with this, but you could also put people on drugs and tranquilize them and put them in a coma and make them sleep for 20 hours and put them on planes that way. So, maybe that's not a practical idea. That's just me personally not being able to afford first class and wishing we all could sleep on the plane together. Maybe I just need to become richer for that idea. But, anyways, the general concept is the bungalow tax, changing urbanization, building canals, the Nevada Corporation. These are all urban planning, population planning, real estate planning techniques that I believe in, that I think are interesting, that I'd like some help with, that I'd like some people's feedback on. I'd like to talk with experts in these various fields to get feedback, to get a more specific, detailed plan, and submit that as a policy proposal, so that when we have big political changes in America and someone's looking to do some kind of Great Wall of China style infrastructure reorganization of the country, French Revolution, communism. If Joseph Stalin is listening to this and he wants to remake America, I have some good policy that I'd like to develop with some experts in urban planning, infrastructure, ecologically. There's a lot of different expertise we're going to need to make this a reality, hopefully in the next 100 years. So, if you like the video, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. You can email me at jupiter.com. That's DJUPTR, Jupiter, DeJupiter, or DeJupiter, depending on how you phonetically pronounce that, at gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye bye.